I'm Debra Wallace, licensed marriage and family therapist. Today, my positive reframe is on grief. And I would like to reframe grief from being something to be avoided and a weakness to something that actually needs to be embraced and represents strength of love and connection. I have found that there is a lot of pressure when there has been a loss, a death, that, sure, we give, it's like there's a pour in of response, like the day of, and maybe the first week or two. And then very quickly, there's this pressure that you need to just get onto it, move on, get right back. And grief does not work that way. We are biologically wired to be in relationship. And when we lose someone that we love, you are going to affect that. And then, in fact, it is going to affect you for the rest of your life, which is more reason why it saddens me that we don't process grief. We don't talk about grief. We're all going to die. And I know even talking about that, people don't even talk about death because it's uncomfortable. Yet we need to sit with those feelings because they are opportunities to connect with ourselves and to actually, when you do take that time and space, you actually can transform that grief. Because really, you're feeling so much pain. And it is so intense because it is a reflection of the love and connection you had with that person you loved. So of course it's going to hurt. If you didn't love and care for them, it wouldn't hurt that much. And so to really look at that reframe, that this magnitude of this grief and pain represents the love and connection you had to that person. And when you actually make time to sit with that and to give yourself permission to grieve, and it's, many may have heard of Kubler-Ross and her work on the stages of grief, which are denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. And her work is actually based on people who got the news that they were going to die, and that this is their grief stages that they go through. And I find these stages to be true in any loss. And then there's a lot more stages to go on. And so initially, when we have a loss, usually our first is going to be shock, because your actually mind and body, we're so intelligent, actually knows that that's too much for you to process. And so you may able to look like you function. Again, everyone handles things differently, but you may actually look like you're functioning okay, and that you can get by. Yet again, it's real, and it's going to come in waves. Grief often comes in waves. If it can feel like tidal waves initially, and those waves, and like especially anytime you see something or anything that reminds you of the loss, it could feel just like you're there again. And that's why, and so like if you sit with it and actually say, it's actually okay, this makes sense that I feel this way, that the more that you keep doing that, you can actually turn that grief into these moments of celebrating them, and where you actually feel their warmth and their love, and you live out their legacy, because they live on through us. And so grief never truly actually goes away. It's just that we expand around it, because think that person matters to you, and that you keep expanding and growing. I have some of my favorite visuals that really show that, and just to remind again that even though these stages, there's no much with any growth in dealing with anything. It's not linear. You don't just go stage. It's much more like this other graphic where it's all over the show, and you could feel like you got over it, but no, it's just ping-ponging all over. And that is completely normal. That is natural. And that's so important to give yourself permission to feel that, because as I mentioned, when you do that, you can actually integrate and carry on the legacy of their love. And I also really want to highlight that grief and loss does not just come with death. That's the kind of the classic normal one. However, it comes with any event that we had hoped for, or expecting something that didn't happen. It happens with natural disasters. It happens with loss of a job. It even happens with divorce. It happens with, you didn't get the the childhood you wanted for, so you have to grieve the childhood you had wished for, and just like with divorce, you have to grieve the loss of the future that you hoped for, and the values that you had. And you can even grieve for parts of yourself, because you could have been one person somewhere and then all of a sudden so much changes, you're now someone else, and you can now grieve those parts. So grief and loss is really fundamental and happening all the time. And so I say, how about we just give ourselves permission to feel and find ways to honor the losses and validate and acknowledge what happened. And then you actually end up reclaiming it in a way, and will actually feel more joy and love and connection when you actually do this. And so my number one tip for when you've experienced a loss of any kind is to really give yourself permission to do whatever you need to do to feel safe, seen, soothed, and secure. And really focus on biological needs, so food, water, breath, the quality of the air you're breathing, movement in your body. Those biological needs are really important, but doing anything that nourishes your mind, body, and spirit. And I also want to give yourself permission to not judge yourself if you're not eating the healthy things or you're binge watching TV shows. Because again, shock is usually our first one, because as I said, your nervous system, your mind knows it's too much to handle. And so you have to titrate these experiences so that it's not so overwhelming. And so if you want to binge watch your favorite show because it's just comforting for you, give yourself permission to do that. If you want to scream and cry, give yourself permission to do that. Do whatever you need to do to feel safe, seen, soothed, and secure in those moments, day by day, step by step. So it really does come in waves, and it really does go on for a long time. And good thing, because again, it represents what that person meant for you, or whatever that loss that you had, it meant something to you. So of course, you're gonna feel that. I encourage you, I have a positive reframe on crying, as well as one on expressing emotions. So I encourage you listening to those. My favorite resource for grief is from Megan Devine, and it's Okay to Not Be Okay. She has a book, and if you go to her website, it's fantastic. Please feel free to make a comment of any other positive reframe you'd like. Please subscribe, share my channel. I appreciate you. Take wonderful care.